SBA funding and the planning aspects of how to get through where we are. So today I'm going to do a recap of where we have been, if there are new people on here, so we can kind of get to the same place as before. I'm going to talk about new developments, and I'm going to talk about beyond the short-term planning that we talked about last week for Jimmy the Mover and Joan the Mover, and then talk a little bit about the long-term or beyond the short-term planning for this. But where we are in this strange area, and I'm in the middle of myself, as I'm involved with companies and I'm involved in the financial aspects of companies and trying to plan out for this. This is a planning aspect like no other you've seen, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So it's a sprint and a marathon at the same time. And as you can see, I'm really feeling here that it's a sprint with hurdles and a marathon at the same time. And at the same time, you kind of have to look out and try to figure out what's on the horizon, what is going to happen, and how do you plan under those kind of circumstances, which is the traditional difficulty with planning. What do you do? How do you look at it when there is almost no givens? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. First, a little bit about trends. On the PPC side, the second round of PPP, good news, there is still money available. And if you haven't applied yet, or if you haven't gotten money, money's still there. As of yesterday, there were 120 billion not spoken for yet, which is a good amount, considering that at this point, a lot of the bigger operations have gotten their apps in and gotten their money. So 120 billion for a bunch of smaller operations is still a lot of money. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be more money coming. When you read about what people are scuttlebutting in about Congress and those kind of things, sounds like there's going to be more money. On EIDL, they did shut down the acceptance of new applications on that. They did not shut down the processing. I know of 2 companies between yesterday and today. One large operation got a lot of money and one little smaller got some money that is just coming through right now. So this sounds like they are starting to actually do more processing and putting case managers on the EIDL side. Very different animal, EIDL. It looks, smells, feels like a more traditional SBA loan. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they see the paperwork on EIDL, because it looks like any others. There's going to be UCC filings, there's going to be notes, there are going to be personal guarantees, there's going to be collaterals, all that stuff. How are they going to manage that? I have no idea, but it's there. Also, I've checked into New Jersey a little bit this week, and compared to what I saw last week, maybe I just looked at the wrong place or something, but I think I go to the same place every time. There are now a number of new programs in New Jersey, and we'll get to that. So a little bit of a recap. As we said, money still available. So that means that we are not all dead yet. If we didn't get there, we can still get the money. And keep in mind, this is something that SBA, Congress, and the administration want to get out there. They want the dollars out there. This is not the typical stuff that you feel about loans that we got to go kind of beg to get a loan. They want to push the money out there. And remember, in this PPP, there are no personal guarantees. There is no collateral. There is a recourse for you personally only if you misuse or lie, not otherwise. Because in the end, they actually don't want to collect. They want as much of this to be forgiven as possible. So again, recap, what do you get? 2.5% of payroll costs, which is gross payroll, local state payroll taxes, benefits cost, and health insurance. 2.5 times the monthly average for last year. That's what you can get. Now, let's talk a little bit about on the forgiving side. That's been a lot of kind of hoopla about that, a lot of big media coverage about forgiveness, and there's been some development on it. Again, a recap on it. What's forgiven? 75% of the forgiven amount has to be payroll related. The same thing, gross payroll, local, state, and payroll taxes, benefit costs, health insurance. That has to constitute 75% of the forgiveness. Then you can add to that rent. I'm starting to see that you can add other type of rent expenses, such as equipment leases. I would certainly try, if there's room, mortgage interest and utilities. And that can then constitute 33% of the payroll basis. And there's been a lot of talking about the forgiveness, and there are some talk in Congress that there are going to be some bills going through, hopefully, that takes the 8 weeks that the forgiveness is calculated on and extends that. That makes a huge difference. If that would go to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 weeks, huge difference for businesses as to what gets forgiven. Also, the 75% is talk about that could increase to be up towards 100%. And 75% of 2.5 comes from that administration in Congress originally said that this is going to be a 2-month deal and then over with. Well, by now we know that's not so. The premise for the 75% kind of gone. And again, everybody wants you to be able to get this loan forgiven. You got to remember that when it comes down to when this is going to happen in 6 months, where you're going to have to account for it, they want you to forgive it. Lenders are freaking out because they're now kind of waking up to this debate, saying that I might get stuck with these loans on my balance sheet, and it's billions of dollars, and their balance sheet may not be able to take it. And so they are going to the Treasury and SBA saying, wait a minute, we thought that these loans were going to be forgiven when they came out. We went full board, we did our duty, blah, blah, blah. And then now your guidance is saying that all these small companies we're lending to, they're going to pay back. And you know what? They're not going to be able to. So I'm stuck with unperforming loans. I'm saying all this, that I'm saying there's a disclaimer. I don't know that anything is going to be done about it, but it sure sounds like it. I may not bank on it, but I think it's going to happen because there is such an uproar over that issue. Because what is going to happen? Think about it on a macro level. So many millions of companies got this when they're in trouble. So now they're going to turn around and try to pay it back. Kind of good luck thing. There are some additional guidance on sole proprietors. And that has been a lot of questions on how do you first get a loan as a sole proprietor? And we covered that the last time, your Schedule C divided by 12 times 2.5. Then there's the whole question of how are we going to calculate what's forgiven for a sole proprietor? I I couldn't quite figure it out. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. So I started looking at what do the prominent CPA firms really say? What because they get kind of the word from behind the scenes. And what they are saying is that it looks like for the sole proprietor, that's going to be all considered an owner replacement, owner compensation replacement, i.e., it's all going to be kind of automatically forgiven. So that 75% of that amount that was the basis from the Schedule C will be forgiven. And I'm guessing part of that is because they're probably thinking it's going to be way too hard to try to figure out from a processing perspective what it should be. But that is what they are saying. So that in this example you see here, there was somebody on the Schedule C for 2019 had 27,300 net income. And then that becomes 2227 for payroll costs and qualified for, what does it say, $5,700 in funding. And then if you take the 27,300 and run that out on 8 weeks, that becomes $4,200 out of the 56 or 5,700 that is automatically forgiven. There again, disclaimer, because we don't know what they're really going to do in the end. But that makes sense to me. It makes total sense. And the smart CPAs are saying that this is what's happening. Another interesting wrinkle on this, it came up as a question the last time, and I didn't perceive the question. I perceived the question in one way, and that way I perceived the question was, can we make distribution to partnerships and to partners in a partnership and have that forgiven? And I said no, based on that I was seeing in front of me a partnership with more passive partners and having payroll and everybody active actually paid on payroll. And the answer is no, as far as I know. Then there's another kind of a partnership also, obviously, and that is that we have 3 people in a partnership, all active partners, nobody taking payroll, everybody getting compensated through distributions. Then what it looks like is the answer is yes, you can make distributions, and those distributions would then count towards the forgiveness. What the smart guys and gals are saying here is that the question is, do you have to make distributions? That is an unknown. If you have to make the distribution to be able to count that. Based on how you look at sole proprietorships, maybe not. But I'm not sure. Maybe the safe bet, if the business can take it to do the distributions. And maybe there's some creative people do distribution, put the money back into the company as another investment. Now, there are many ways of skin a cat, and I'm not recommending anything or anything like that. One difficulty with the K1s that I've heard of in applying for the PPP is that some lenders don't get it. Their machinery, their AI in looking at their machines don't recognize the K1s. And the topic has become new and it's not that frequent probably. So they're probably going to fix it or just go to multiple lenders and maybe one of them, 2 of them actually get it and recognize it. And again, everybody who gets a kickback from a PPP lender that says that your paperwork isn't sufficient, look at what they're asking you and try to figure out. And if you make the determination that, wait a minute, I did submit that. Remember, there's probably not a person sitting behind this and looking at it. It's a machine checking a box, basically. And if that machine can't read what you send them, going to kick it out. I know one person who submitted the same paperwork 5 times. The 5th time, they said, oh, we got it. So it took 5 times. So, and that could very well be.
I think, Chris, we may have a couple of questions that might be
Sure.
sort of relevant to that. So somebody's asking, their bank didn't include the Schedule C in their payroll amount. So I know it's not the K1, but they didn't include the Schedule C in the payroll amount for total forgiveness. And she couldn't reach the bank to correct it and had to sign off on the loan so it would expire. This goes to the machinery doing the work, right?
Yeah.
So her question is, can she still submit that part for forgiveness during the audit? She's an LLC sole proprietor.
What is being said is that you can only get 1 PPP loan per entity. That is what they're saying. What will happen if you get multiple? I don't know. I don't know if it can get through. If you did it as an LLC, so single member, you probably then did it with your social security number. And I don't know if SBA is going to kick it out or not. The rules say you can only do 1 and that you can't get a redo. And that's one of the unfortunate things about that. But maybe I would try. I don't know how you get hold of somebody to actually do it, or if you just go in and do it again.
And then I think also part of that question was, what if she just submitted her payroll amount for included in the forgiveness part during the audit after the fact?
Yeah, so now you're from the getting the loan to the getting the forgiveness part. Yes, what if I understand it correctly, this is now a directive to the banks. What's going to happen is that the same institution, from a machinery perspective, that data loan is now also going to determine the forgiveness. So they are going to look for the same backup for the loan, for the forgiveness, as they did for the loan. So if you submitted the payroll for the loan, they're going to look for the payroll records for the forgiveness.
And will it be, do you think it'll be the same kind of AI that will determine forgiveness as, okay, so, okay.
Yes, but here again, remember that it is a bank, it is a machine, and I can't tell you what to do. I don't want to recommend. What would I do? I would try. The worst thing can happen, I think, is that they kick it out. And don't recognize it. Because there are lots of people I know in the loan side, there are people made mistake and it went through, good or bad. I mean, this person had a bad experience. I know other people who got it the other way around, and they can't say anything. I mean, there's nobody who say, hey, I got too much money. They tried, nobody listens.
Okay, we have a few questions. Do you want to take a couple other ones, or do you want to keep going and then?
No, we can.
Could sole proprietorships with no employees, only a husband and wife operation apply for the PPP?
Yeah, based on the Schedule C, the 2019 Schedule C, the net income on that Schedule C would be divided by 12 and multiplied by 2.5.
Okay.
And there again, to go back to the last time, confusing to some and some CPAs have kind of muddied the water by saying, well, I haven't done the taxes yet. You don't have a Schedule C. Make one. Make the Schedule C. If you need the money, make the Schedule C, and then you end up doing the taxes later, because most people at this point actually haven't done them yet.
Right. That would make sense.
You got an automatic extension to 7/15. So you would take the Schedule C, and you would get your P&L, and you would put in the numbers that you want to put in, want to put in the Schedule C, and that's what you're submitting.
And then there's a question, if I only had payrolls the first 3 quarters of 2019, and then my company switched to 1099 freelance payments, what would happen?
Personally, if your PPP was based on payroll records, then you cannot apply the 1099s as the forgiveness portion. I would, for 8 weeks at least, that are the determining factor, switch them back to employees. I don't see any other way around that.
Okay. We'll do one more, and then we can maybe continue and then come back to some more questions. Sure. Has there been any discussion of making the EIDL loans forgivable? No,
none whatsoever that I've seen. It's has remained completely a 30-year loan at 3.75% interest, with, as I said before, the typical things in it, that there is a personal guarantee, there is a collateral, and there is going to be a UCC filing.
Okay, thank you.
So another thing that has come up, that one of those discussion topics and difficulties how we look at things, and that's the full-time equivalence. And here is what's in front of us here is U.S. Chambers of Commerce take on the issue. Doing the payroll calculation is pretty clear at this point. It is your payroll costs with health insurance, benefits, blah, blah, blah. And that has to be 75% of the total forgiveness. But then there's also the thing about the full-time equivalence that's not supposed to go down between the 8 weeks and some period of time. So here you have options. And one option is the average number of full-time equivalents per month from February 15 to June 30 last year. Or if you can take the option 2, January 1, 2020 to February 29, 2020. If you are a seasonal business, a Jersey Shore seasonal business, that seems like a pretty good option. And then for seasonal employees, you could use that same 2019 last year to June 30, 2019. So there are different options on that. That is what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is saying. And that's what you hear from a lot of corners. What you also hear, I wouldn't count on it, I wouldn't bank on it, because I would take it into consideration. They may get rid of that requirement. May. It's a big may. But it's one of those, everybody says, well, how on earth am I going to get to that when we're in a lockdown? I can't get people back. And it's unreasonable for me to just hire people back to sit and twiddle their thumbs. It doesn't make sense. I can make no reasonable use of people, and I need the money to actually start up. And seems like people are listening, but as of now, this is what it is. There is another big thing about certification. Most people don't know, because most people actually don't read agreements that they sign. If you sign here, 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 they sign here, 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 no idea what you sign. And that goes for probably 80, 90%. When you sign for the PPP, you actually signed and certified that you had no other way to obtain this liquidity for your company or for your operation. And that became a big discussion point, and some people started pulling back because of that. Now, what apparently just happened today or yesterday was that the guidance from SBA now says that if your PPP is less than $2 million, you are automatically deemed to have fulfilled your debt certification requirement. So there is not going to be an SBA auditor showing up on your doorstep and saying, give me your records to show that you really needed this money. Now, if you got more than 2 million, I would make sure that I got my ducks in line. But under 2, and that's a big thank you, because nobody wants that any small company trying to go back to this period of time when you sign. This could be 2 years later. That's a big relief that that's out. Payback. Again, that's anything on the loan that's not forgiven. 6-month deferral and then 18 months payback at 1% annual interest rate. And people are freaking out on this. And I'm saying, I get it. I understand that. You got to make sure that you understand what you're going to do with the money, etc. But it's a great loan. 1% interest, even if you only keep it for, you pay it off over 18 months after 6 months, it's a great loan. And there is another aspect to that too, and that is that they want you to not pay it back. They being the lenders, the SBA, and the feds, Treasury Department, etc. This is intended to not being paid back. So they're probably going to figure out some things in there, but even if they don't, it's a great loan. Where can you get a better loan? I don't know. And there is no personal guarantee, no collateral. So if you default on the loan, nobody's going to come and take your house. Nobody's going to come and take your accounts receivable in your business. I'm not saying to default on it, but these are difficult times. So it could happen that you could not pay back. To me, what would happen would be that SBA is going to have in their records that you defaulted on an SBA loan and you can't get a new one. And you're going to have in the records that you defaulted on a loan. But you at least got a fighting chance to do something. And if you don't need the money, then you also know you're not going to default on the money. So I personally, at 1% interest, I would take the loan. Now, let's talk a little about planning. Or do we want to insert a couple of questions before we take the next step? If there are any.
Oh, sorry. You busted me checking my phone. Okay, so a couple of questions. Healthcare costs. What if you started off, or you start off offering healthcare to your employees within the 8 weeks, but it didn't exist before? Does that qualify? And I think that means, does it qualify for forgiveness?
I think so. I think that it does. I think what's going to happen is that the machine at the bank is going to sit there and say, I need payroll and I need $72,300 in these kind of costs, and I check the box. I think that's what's going to happen. And if the question is, do I add the healthcare cost because it's going to be forgiven? That's a different question altogether. I don't know in the current environment that I would go out and commit to additional cost for my business that I didn't have before just to get it forgiven. Because now, once you're out of the 8 weeks, you still have healthcare costs. And what happens is that you're gonna, let's say it's $8,000, whatever the number is, $8,000, $2,000, you're gonna pay those now. If you don't get it forgiven and you need to start up your business, then you can spread that number of dollars over 2 years, actually over 18 months, starting in 6 months. So it's a planning. Don't get too hung up on the forgiveness part, but answer is yes, I think so.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have, I think this is a couple of separate questions. I'll try and break them up. Are my employees entitled to unemployment insurance as freelance employees? Can the employees still have the additional $600, I guess that's the unemployment, on top of the $250 they already earn?
I believe that they added that feature to it. Originally, that doesn't really exist that way unless, remember when you do your taxes as a sole proprietor, part of those taxes you end up actually paying unemployment insurance. At the end, even if you lose money as a net income, at the end, at least I do, they tell me, well, you still owe whatever the number is, $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 in unemployment insurance. So, I believe they added a feature that, yes, as independent contractors and 1099 type people, that you can apply for that, yes.
And then the second part of that question, it's a completely separate topic, is are EIDL loans from Cabbage, PayPal, and QuickBooks still active to accept applications? Because he's having a problem finding the application online.
Well, those lenders being asked about there, they do the PPP program. EIDL is directly through SBA. There are no lenders in between. That's a direct program with SBA. PPP program, they are still, I couldn't speak to individual lenders for it, but yes, there are absolutely lenders out there accepting applications, and I believe that Cabbage is, etc. But that could go up and down based on how processing overwhelmed that they are.
And I think you said earlier, EIDL is not accepting any more applications. Is that right?
At this point, they're not. Yes. Although when you look there is a little balloon or ball that says apply, but they say that they're not accepting it. So I don't know what happens if you actually apply.
So I guess it doesn't hurt to try, right? But it may not go anywhere if they say they're not.
It doesn't hurt to try. That's right.
Then we have one, I just opened a store in Red Bank, I just took up a store in Red Bank, and we were going to open when COVID hit. Unfortunately, I don't have any history to show on all this kind of paperwork. Can I still apply for PPP? I cannot open the store at this point and haven't been able to collect anything.
At this point, I think that is difficult. And I think that is difficult because based on what their records are requiring to do, either you would first, number one, you had to be existing at 2/15/20. You have to be in business and have had generated revenues and have costs at that time. then you could use this year's payroll or Schedule C numbers for the basis for it. Then the question is, you got to find the bank, the lender, whose machinery will accept that. And
So
that's a question of just trying.
So I think the answer, so she's just put another comment, she doesn't have any payroll. So then the answer, I believe what you're saying is it would come from the Schedule C from as long as there was business before 2/15/20. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So the business, I believe what she's saying is the business, she took up a store in Red Bank, but was possibly in business before then.
Yeah. But
So you
then
would take
Schedule C, the question then was she making money in the period of time?
Got
You're
it.
kind of stuck as a sole proprietor if you didn't, because then there's no basis to calculate the number.
Okay. So another question is, as a home builder, all my work is through subcontractors. What assistance can I get?
Here, so I'm reading that the person asking the question is a master contractor, and all their cost is going out to payments to their subcontractors. And then it would be dependent on how the person is paying themselves and in what the structure is. Let's say that they are a single member LLC or they are a sole proprietor, then it would be based on the Schedule C. If they are a corporation, have had themselves on the payroll, then they could claim their own payroll as the basis for the PPP. They can't claim the payments to independent contractors or other companies as a basis. No, it would have to be either Schedule C or their own payroll.
Okay, and then does HRA reimbursement qualify?
I believe you can have, if there is a cost associated with that your business pays for, yes. If you're talking about one for yourself that you do as a person, no.
Okay, for PPP forgiveness, does payroll count by the actual pay date or by the pay period? For example, the employees worked May 1st, the PPP funds received May 5th, pay date is May 10th. Will the time paid for on the 10th be included towards time worked before the funds were received count fully toward forgiveness?
It's a huge topic, and there's a lot of discussion about that. And everybody should have, who had got the money and thinking about the 8 weeks, all should have said, okay, how do I do this? How does it work? How do I make it the most advantageous for myself? There are some who are interpreting what's going to happen as the least of, meaning, so you're talking about a question of accrued expenses versus actual paid expenses. And when you get to paid expenses, then you also get into the whole area of prepaid and postpaid. And some people are saying it's going to be the least of the accrued or the actual paid. Others are saying, no, it's paid. In the end, the one that you can manipulate everything like this. This is accounting. So you got to decide which horse you want to put your money on. And then it's going to depend really what your lender is going to look at. is the lender, the CPAs are discussing like you're going to sit down and have a discussion with somebody about this. You're not. Maybe if you got $3-4 million, maybe there's going to be discussion about it. If you got substantially less than that, it's not going to be discussion. This is going to be a machine at the lender, and it's going to be programmed to look at it a certain way, and that's the way kind of it's going to be. So I would pick one. I would make my records reflect what I'm picking and make that the most advantageous to myself.
Okay, now, and when do you start the process of forgiveness?
The day you get the money. It counts from the day you get the money 8 weeks forward from that.
And when do you actually start the process with the bank? Like, how do you, okay, I'm spending this on payroll, I need to be forgiven. When does that happen?
We don't know. The directions for the kind of go backwards here. Directions to the bank is for the lenders is that after 7 weeks in, that's the first time that you can resell these loans, which means that not until after 7 weeks will they be able to start making the calculation. But you really can't do it until after 8 weeks. So banks are probably going to be very prompt, because what do they want to do? They want to take these billions of dollars and put it in a big package with a bow on it and sell it on the secondary market to get rid of it. They don't want to process this. They don't want to service them. They want to get rid of it. So I'm guessing that they're going to be fairly quick at some point here. No longer than 6 months, because after 6 months you have to start paying. It has to be established by that time.
Okay, and then we have one. Our small LLC got a PPP loan for guaranteed payments to partners. How do we document payments to partners in order for the loan to be forgiven?
By the bank account. You're going to have to show the money going out. You're going to have the records of what you did, and the records that it was a payment to partner, it was a distribution, and it coming out of the bank account that you said that it was going to come out of. When you applied, you probably had to actually send them the monthly bank statements. And the bank is going to, the machine at the bank is going to look for the same account numbers in those bank statements as you give them later on.
Okay. Will you be able to appeal the bank decision if they don't give you all the forgiveness?
I think so. I think that they're going to have a process for that. As of right now, I don't see there is anything established on that yet. All this happened too quickly. But I think that there will be a process for that, because again, everybody involved in this wants to have it forgiven. Here, the banks aren't going to make any money on servicing this. They made money making the loan. So, and they get stuck with nothing if it's all forgiven. That's their best scenario. So I'm guessing that they're going to work with you.
Okay, and then back to the question about the store we had just now about the store in Red Bank. So the company was open since 2012, and they decided to take on the store this year. I believe it was this year. And now but they didn't pay themselves any salary. They put the money back into the business. So how would that work? Would that still be Schedule C?
Yeah, and hopefully they did good accounting, good accrual accounting for the time. They didn't pay themselves, but they put the money back into business. So there are investments in there. There are money going back into the business that, assuming that they haven't done the taxes yet, all that stuff. So there is actually showing profit for the period of time. So that's the number that becomes the basis for the PPP on Schedule C. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have one last question, which is, what about other funding sources like the SBA emergency disaster loans?
Well, the emergency disaster loans for this particular purpose was all funneled into these that you have here. Now, there are, let's see here, New Jersey programs. And I said, I looked, and there are other states too, people looking for other states. I've been involved in applying in California, and they had a pretty good program, and it looks like some company we are affiliated with out there might get some money from the California CDC, Economic Development Corporation out there. And New Jersey seems like they have fairly quickly developed some program, which you see on the screen here. A small business emergency assistance loan, New Jersey entrepreneur support, small business emergency assistance guarantee program, etc. There are a number on there. Go on njeda.com. And there is on the middle, it's kind of funny they do their website, because when you take the cursor over it, they get all kinds of kind of crap going on there. So you kind of have to wait a little bit. And right in the middle is they're saying kind of check this out type thing right in the middle of the page. Click there and you get to the programs that they have. I don't know what money they have in it, but it appears to me that this has kind of come up now, because I didn't see this a week ago.
Okay. Another question. Our annual reviews take place in November. Therefore, the employees rolled over into 2020 with greater income than the average of 2019. If our payroll is greater than 75% of the loan amount, will they accept the amount of money paid over 75%?
Yes, but only up to 100% of the loan, obviously. So, but yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. That's it for the open questions.
Okay. Then we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's planning. And what you have on the picture here is really how I feel about this planning right now. And I'm going through it with a couple of SCORE clients, also going through it with a couple of companies we are affiliated with. And it is interesting, to say the least, and my emotions going through it is all what you see here. It's sunny because we got money, so we have something to plan on, actually. It's confusing completely as to when is the business going to come back? How is this going to work for us? How do we do this? And it's so frustrating because of the same reason, is that, how am I going to do this? What is my bottom line planning here going to look like? And I thought that we can take us back to Jimmy and Joan, the movers, that we were looking at the last time. And I'm going to do something here. So this is where we were the last time. And if you remember, Jimmy, the mover, is not going to make it through the year. He's not going to make it through August, because what he did was that he ended up not investing any money in his business. He hired on additional costs, so he got 100% forgiveness. and he was going to run out of money in August. Joan, the sister, was a little bit of a smarter cookie, and that was that she took some of the money. She got 75% forgiven. She accepted that she was going to have $112,000 that to be paid back. But she was also taking that money and investing in the business to get her cost of goods sold from 50 to 45%. Then there's a question of, so by the end of the year, she squeaked by at $43,000 in August in a bank account. Then she's grown. At the end of the year, she's looking good. However, what she also really did was that she deferred a bunch of stuff out of here so that she now has to pay back 100 grand in January, 100 grand in February, and here at the end of March, April 1st, typically comes the big down payment on insurance. So now she's going to have to figure out all of that. So what she did was that she invested $10,000 a month, $120,000, and she was able to get her cost of goods sold down, and she's going to squeak by. So let's say that she would have done things differently. And the point here is that look at what you think is going to happen, play different scenarios. Let's see that she didn't do that. She didn't invest it. She's going to pay back the $112,000 starting in November. And what she did, instead of investing the money, she said, okay, she didn't go through August. She needed to do that. So she says, I'm going to borrow $50,000 on a short-term loan. I have to pay back $75,000 next April. Next April is far out. Don't worry about it. And she has plenty of money in December. She takes a distribution in January. She does that. And now here, this is where she has to look in her business. So the point here is bottlenecks in her business is April and May, June, because of how it rolls. She's now in a negative bank balance because of how she did it over here. So what she really did, she didn't take that extra loan, and she invested in the business. And now she's looking good, even with that. And if she was really conservative, she wouldn't, even though she's sitting here as $590,000 in December, but her real eyes are on the goal, which is in the spring. Once she's past there, she's looking good, but she's got to get past there. So maybe she actually forgoes that distribution, and now she can pretty calmly run her business and wait until the end of next year to take bigger distributions. This is just as an example of kind of the multifaceted planning that we have to do in this business today. And there are so many variables to this. I just kind of play with it. What could the different seasonality be? What is the revenues, etc. And I played with a suppressed revenue scenario in this scenario. And I look at different scenarios. Where are we going to end up at the end of the day, where the bottleneck are? This obviously, I know this kind of business. These are not the numbers. I am involved in the business, in an operation in this industry. Numbers are bigger, but this is kind of what you have. And when you have this kind of things, if you can get the cost of goods sold and decrease the cost on that, or push up the pricing. Then you affect that number every day, every month. And we're starting to run out of time, so we get into the more of the long-term planning the next time. And also interesting, the next, not this Friday, the following Friday, we are going to have a person from the New Jersey tourism industry talking about the 19 revenues and the expected 20 revenues, right, Claire?
Yeah, visit, guest counts, etc., to New Jersey, what's anticipated in terms of visitors and revenues, etc.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, Chris, thank you so much again for that really valuable information. Just as a reminder to everybody on the call, Chris is here every week on Wednesdays at 4 talking about the various COVID-19 updates that we have from the SBA. We have coming up this week, we have Senator Vingopal on Friday talking to us. He's going to be just talking about things going on in Jersey. He's a Monmouth County resident, and he's going to be talking to us about just basic things that are happening in New Jersey and taking a Q&A. He doesn't have a specific topic, so but he is expecting lots of questions. And then we have a number of different guests lined up over the next few weeks. So stay tuned, check our Facebook page, check our website. And just a reminder, if anybody is looking for free business mentoring, you can find a local SCORE mentor on our website, monmouth.score.org. If you're not based in Monmouth County, if you go to score.org, you can find somebody through the national website. Again, monmouth.score.org. Mentoring is always free. So again, thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you on one of our future webinars. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Claire.